Hey YouTube, Dawson Writer here with just a quick little Power Rangers discussion video. Recently, Illuminerdi had an interview with Simon Bennet that just had some interesting tidbits I want to talk about. I'm not going to go over it like line by line, just kind of go over a few of the bullet points, and one point in particular that I think is just interesting to talk about with everything going on. You know, he talked a little bit about Dino Fury, about tying it to more of the existing lore, and how other seasons usually are kind of written as more standalone, and then connections kind of come from fans and stuff later, which makes sense. He talked about how the Morphin Masters are going to obviously have more later in the season, which I assumed. We have a whole half season left, so I assume we'll learn more about them in the context of this series. You know, teased that Lord Zedd is likely out there and going to come back, which I think regardless is assumed, but given the fact that they brought him back, period, and that there's been a lot of merchandise about him. I mean, we got the Lightning Collection thing. I think there's a Nutcracker figure and a basic figure on the way, so since they've integrated that, and since Zedd's such a big character to bring back, I assumed he'd be back. Whether it's just for one more episode or like a more major role, we'll have to see, but I just kind of assumed he'd be back. He didn't talk about the 30th anniversary. I think they asked about it, and he just said that he hopes whatever it is satisfies fans, and he can't say any more, which just, you know, there was a news video yesterday I had about the fact that filming is going to be beginning, on that soon, I think within the month. So basically between all this, we know that something's going to be happening. We don't know what yet, we don't know how long, what form, what adaptation, whatever, but there's going to be something happening, so at least we know we will have some sort of season before the reboot universe in the following year. But I think the most interesting thing to me, this isn't necessarily new information, but it's the first time I've seen it come up somewhere where I can point to it. I mean, I could point to it before, but it was kind of like lost in the shuffle, which was information about like the restrictions they were under as writers. Because he talked about Dino Fury, he talked about the other people working on the show, Becca and Alwyn, and he said that they put a lot of care and have a lot of care for like the writing and the lore, but their hands are basically tied because of these rules. It was basically kind of, I think, referred to it before as like this Bible of rules they had, especially under the Saban era. And then they also asked him about Beast Morphers, not Beast Morphers, but they asked him, I think it was like, if you could go back and revisit a season or redo a season, what would it be? And he said Beast Morphers, because every time I say that fast, it sounds like I'm saying Beef Morphers. Anyway, Beast Morphers. Beast Morphers. What was I saying? He was saying how like that was a season with like lots of really cool stuff and potential and ideas, but they didn't get to go fully where they wanted to because their hands were still tied by those restrictions in that series Bible. And I bring that up because I've talked about this before in past videos, I think a couple of reviews and news videos, about how I think it was him that had mentioned that before, that there were these various like mandates that they were under. And I think he answered that. It was either on Twitter or like he might have posted it on Ranger Board, but I couldn't remember exactly where it was. But I remember him answering that, and it just got lost in the shuffle. Like I didn't remember like, oh yeah, it was Ranger Board thread, page 147. Like I didn't remember. So like this is now somewhere you can watch or see the cliff notes of and like know that there was stuff going on, which I guess we kind of always assumed. But basically they had these rules and restrictions of how the show has to behave, which is kind of a lot of the reason the show's been the way that it has for the last decade, which I think is really unfortunate. I don't know the behind-the-scenes stuff, but I personally always believed that Nick didn't have really anything to do with it. It would surprise me if they did, just because that's the only show on their network that behaved that way. The only one that I can think of that's close is like the pre-K programming, like in terms of the stuff they could say and couldn't say and how they could behave, you know, because everything else on Nick, whether it was something they produced or didn't, or like, you know, a third-party situation or whatever you want to call it, nothing else really had those restrictions. It seemed like it was more of a Saban thing. And I think it really held the show back, and it was really backwards. It was really regressive, I thought, the way they looked at it. Just some of the things about... It's kind of funny. They have the rule book on what Power Rangers should be, as does the fandom. They have a rule book on what Power Rangers should be. And I don't like should be or supposed to's when it comes to anything. I think anything's possible. And I think some of the limits are definitely very frustrating. And in retrospect, you know, it's not going to make me love certain seasons or certain things I didn't like retroactively or anything, but it has me cutting a little more slack. It's kind of like something like Spider-Man 3, which I never hated personally, but I've appreciated that movie more and more over the years, the more I learned about like what the behind-the-scenes drama was. Same thing with like Amazing Spider-Man 2. There's been other movies and shows like that too, where I'm able to appreciate it more and appreciate what they were able to do that was good, knowing that they had all these problems or restrictions. And I think that's unfortunate. And I think Beast Morphers is actually a really good example he brings up, because it almost seems like this perfect example for me, because I liked a lot of Beast Morphers early on, and I liked a lot about it, but it always felt like it was like this close to greatness. It was just shy of the potential. And, he brought up like being able to do better with the Venjix story and tying it more and keying it up more, or teeing it up more, keying it up. Anyway, language. Also, I couldn't help but think of one of my biggest, I almost said one of my biggest missed opportunities, but one of my biggest things with Beast Morphers as far as missed opportunity goes was Blaze and Roxy. Two really cool, unique characters. I think there was immense potential for them in both seasons, and like after they turned good and we got the Robo ones, they were barely there. So I think that's a good season that kind of represents this weird in-between limbo they were in. It definitely seems like Dino Fury eased up on that a little bit, especially within Season 2. And I hope that after this, we're free of that. I don't know how much of this restrictions are going to apply to the 30th anniversary season, if any, but I certainly hope that less of them do, and I hope they throw out that Bible of restrictions for the reboot and just play by a new rule book. But I thought that was interesting, and it gives a little bit of perspective on why things are the way that they are. I'm looking forward to the future. I hope we have a new rule book going forward. But let me know what you guys thought of all of this in the comments. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.